So we're going to talk about Jono O'Carroll, the boxer, and Conor McGregor. And a sort of a spat has broken out between the two of them on social media. Comments were made by McGregor. Jono O'Carroll has taken the comments up as an insult to his religion, which is Islam.
Yeah.
And they're having a bit of a set too. As these sort of boxers do, it's a little bit of, theatre from them in a way. But it's interesting that we are even talking about boxers on Crime World, because we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be talking about sports people really at all. And most of the sports people that we do talk about, the reason we know about them, about their careers or anything like that, is largely because of their links maybe to organised crime. And both Jono O'Carroll and Conor McGregor have links to the Kinahan organisation. Jono O'Carroll in particular is somebody who has been based out in Dubai for years, has been very supportive of Daniel Kinahan, and he has converted to Islam.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we're seeing about him now relates to religious festivals that he attends, and obviously he wears the clothing and all the rest of it. Jono O'Carroll, where did he come from and how did he get so entrenched with Daniel Kinahan?
Well, I mean, Jono O'Carroll, in fairness to both McGregor and Jono O'Carroll, I mean, they aren't involved in any crime. I mean, that's clear, and nobody would ever suggest that they're involved in organised criminality to do with the Kinahans. But I suppose it just shows how Daniel Kinahan's activities have just wormed their way into nearly everybody who is a significant player in the boxing world. I mean, Jono O'Carroll was probably one of the most devoted fighters to Daniel Kinahan. He was one of the guys who, even as the sanctions were being brought by the US, even when other boxers started to step away from him, he was one of the guys who really put I think he was the first guy after the sanctions to come out publicly and give Daniel not this ringing endorsement. Amazingly, he described how, he described in glowing terms that Daniel changed his life, including giving him The Secret, wasn't it? Where the book where you manifest your I haven't read The Secret, but where you manifest your life's goals and all of that, which always struck me as kind of an odd kind of.
Did he say he gave him that book? Because funny enough, that book and that whole thing sort of floats around a lot of stories around Kinahan, and that it's obviously maybe something he does.
Yeah, but
when he meets people, he gives them this book, and this is, it's almost sort of slightly culty leadery, isn't it? The same.
Well, it is
kind
to
of
an
thing
extent
goes to these people.
Now, Jono O'Carroll was, he was a talented boxer. I mean, but he was also, by his own sort of admission, somebody who he wasn't one of these guys who was 18 or 19 who were always going to be at this top level. He kind of had a struggle, did ordinary jobs, but eventually made it through. He fought, I think he debuted as a professional fighter in November 2014. He faced Declan Geraghty, who was also one of the MGM boxers at the time, and he was fought in the undercard of Matthew Macklin. So really his rise and...
Well, look at that, November 2014, and that was when he debuted in Ireland. I think he began his career in Australia 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
But he was also, just to point out, he's 32 years of age now. So in 2014, he was only 22. 21. Yeah, so he was quite young. But November 2014, that was the big event in the National Stadium. And, again, as crime reporters, we were at that event because, of course, Daniel Kinahan had at that point set up what was called the MGM gym in Marbella, along with Matthew Macklin. I think it was called Macklin's Gym Marbella was the headline. And Matthew Macklin was a boxer from the UK, essentially. I think he had links with Tipperary and was a lifelong friend of Daniel Kinahan, had been introduced to through another friend of theirs. And they'd all basically ended up out in Spain, where they were running this dream ticket for boxers, MGM at the time. A lot of these boxers that they signed up, we believe, would never have made it into professional boxing. They would have remained in the amateur ranks. There wasn't really that much business for them in professional boxing. And they were beginning in that stage in November 2014. They were coming into their prime when they were signing up hundreds of boxers. Maybe I won't say hundreds, but at one point, certainly within the year, they had 100 boxers on their books, including some of the kind of the British Olympic team they had signed up, and they were headhunting. So, when you see him there in November 2014 as a 21-year-old, he's facing Declan Geraghty, who goes on to be one of Daniel Kinahan's boxers as well in his promotions company. And Matthew Macklin, of course, is owning this club. Very impressionable age to be there at that point in time.
And I think John O'Carroll has spoke about how, without Daniel Kinahan's mentoring, he mightn't have made it as a professional. Now, he did win this prize fighter tournament, which was kind of a couple of years later, and that really propelled John O'Carroll into the big league, because that was a big event run by the Hearn family.
And he had signed with Eddie Hearn at that stage. Eddie Hearn was certainly the promoter of that Dublin event, so he obviously
but that was a big thing, and it made it up. I mean, so John O'Carroll was one of those guys who really had that personal loyalty to Daniel Kinahan as well. You can see them sometimes in pictures. And when Daniel Kinahan ultimately moved to Dubai, so did John O'Carroll. But
you see that personal loyalty, which they always talk about. I mean, let's look on that a different way. You have Daniel Kinahan at the head, neck and tail of boxing at that point, offering kind of money to boxers, offering a professional career, offering coaching. What he was offering out in Spain was accommodation, money and coaching and all the right food and everything. The money wasn't there, others said, within boxing to be able, for all those people to be able to afford it. This was a dream, a nirvana.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a slightly fake loyalty, because it's your paymaster, isn't it? It's the guy who has all the money and who holds all the power.
But I do think in John O'Carroll's case, I do think that the loyalty he feels is genuine in his mind, and he has spoken about it. He said, motherfuckers can say what you want, but this man gave me opportunities in this sport, and without him, I would have walked away a long time ago. I stand by everything I said. I'll always be thankful for his help and his guidance and this support. So that's talking about Daniel Kinahan.
November 2014, he debuts in Ireland. By November 2015, 12 months later, he's appearing on the undercard at Tyson Fury versus Vladimir Klitschko in Dusseldorf in Germany. I mean, that's an enormous trajectory in your career. I mean, Tyson Fury is 2015, one of the most famous boxers in the entire world. I'm sure getting the opportunity to get on the undercard for that is like a dream come true. Now, of course, he won, John O'Carroll, 10 rounds, which is what's described as the longest bout of his career against Miguel Gonzalez. But being seen by the amount of people that would have tuned in and appeared and tended to see Tyson Fury and
Klitschko.
Thanks. Let's again just look at November 2015 and the influence Daniel Kinahan has there on boxing, where he's at that point. Because it's far later that we start talking about him being the fixer. It's far later before he comes out from the shadows and before Tyson Fury calls him out and thanks him for organising events. And, he is 2015 still there in MGM. It's not long after that he has to pull back, that Matthew Macklin says that Daniel Kinahan's no longer involved. And later then Macklin will say that he independently sold the whole thing to Sandra Vaughan and turned it into MTK, which moves to Dubai. And it takes a long time for Daniel Kinahan really to come to the fore again and for people to properly understand he's been there all the time.
Yeah, and I think that Tyson Fury fight, that's the fight that propelled him into the big leagues, really.
Carroll or Fury?
No, the Fury. That's when he won that world heavyweight title. This incredible comeback, that fight certainly propelled him back on that road where he had.
Well, he was in training because he had been picked up by Kinahan. Yeah. He would later say, or certainly his manager would. Lowest point of his life. He had sort of been a champ. Had suffered from mental health problems and addiction, was talking about drinking vodka for his breakfast, and he was taking all sorts of stuff, and he had put on an enormous amount of weight. And Kinahan, his manager describes, literally plucked him from the scrap heap. Tyson Fury at that point and before that 2015 comeback had a load of debt. And his manager would say that Daniel Kinahan basically paid off the debt, took him out to Spain, put him on a diet, got him exercising along with his friend Billy Joe Saunders, and everybody was, cocooned in this Daniel Kinahan world, really.
Yeah, which ultimately, the success of Fury shot them into a whole other league in terms of international promotions, in terms of reputation, and John O'Carroll stuck with Daniel. Obviously then, simultaneously, I suppose, we have the Conor McGregor story, who is also starting from very humble origins. We won't get into the whole McGregor life story, but, that's simultaneously going on in Dublin, I suppose.
So Conor McGregor, so are you talking about the same time frame? Like, was it 2014, 2015? Was Conor McGregor?
Well, he has his UFC debut in February 2013.
Right.
So it really is kind of simultaneous. And quickly, Conor McGregor becomes a superstar, even before he becomes a champion, because of his way of talking, his presentation. So he really becomes a phenomenon that UFC haven't seen before or afterwards. And ultimately he in along the same sort of time frame, he becomes a world champion, really.
Yeah.
And in that time, Conor McGregor, unlike, I suppose, John O'Carroll, who moves to Spain and then Dubai, Conor McGregor is literally one of the most famous people in the world, but a lot of the time he's in Dublin, isn't he? And when he's in Dublin, you see him associating with people from the Kinahan cartel. Again, McGregor is not involved in crime, but he is panning around with people like David Byrne, who'd be killed in the Regency Hotel. We also have pictures of him with Daniel Kinahan and the like, and various other people that we've spoken about before. So at this stage, these people they're all interacting, and they really are top of the world. I mean, if you look back at 2000, maybe 2016, 2000, just before the Regency, or even in the aftermath of the Regency in 2017, 2018, McGregor is by far and away the number one UFC fighter in the world by a huge distance. And Daniel Kinahan, at that simultaneously, as he approached the end of the 2010s, he becomes... he's been described at the time as the most influential man in professional boxing.
Yeah. Because it was September 2016 when John O'Carroll actually left Matchroom Sport, which was Eddie Hearn's company, and he has a debut with the MTK. Now, 2016 September, MGM, Matthews Gym Marbella, Macklin Gym Marbella, is becoming MTK at some point during later that year or early the next year. It's supposedly sold directly to Sandra Vaughan. And again, it's trying to get itself as a company another step away from Daniel Kinahan. Of course, the Regency Hotel attack has happened. It's propelled the Kinahan cartel into the headlines across the world. And I think Kinahan realises at this point that he has to take, while he is becoming a very influential character in boxing, he has to kind of stay in the shadows. He has to stay in the background. He's not ready yet to step forward. That only really happens when Tyson Fury does that famous selfie video. Yeah. And so that was the moment, I think, that Daniel Kinahan comes out from the shadows and is named and called out. Of course, that was sanctioned. Tyson Fury can be a bit crazy on social media, but there's no way he did that without the okay from Daniel Kinahan. And like in the aftermath of that, Daniel Kinahan very much comes out of those shadows and is there and is being congratulated by all his boxers, and people start talking, and the likes of John O'Carroll feels that it's sort of time, I suppose, to come out and to support Kinahan. Kinahan starts being photographed. I think one of the first boxers really to either be photographed with him, was it Declan Garrity was photographed with him in Dubai?
He was one of them, and Darren Till, I think, was
Darren Till.
one. Yeah. Another who's a UFC fighter as well.
So it sort of dripped fed out, didn't it?
Yeah.
They started, it started becoming, it was this narrative, this is normal. Daniel Kinahan's an okay guy. He's no convictions. He's really good. He's been amazing for boxing. He has, really treated all us boxers really well. And as you said at the beginning, John O'Carroll in particular came out very strongly in April of 2022 when he was the first boxer who came out after the sanctions.
Yeah.
So what did he say at that point?
He said, without this man, I wouldn't still be in this boxing game. This is a true legend of the sport. He should be celebrated from the boxing world. Without him, half of these so-called big fights would have never happened. And that's a fact. And then he also, at a month before the sanctions, I think he had said, I have to say, I owe it all to Daniel Kinahan simply for getting me the opportunity and the fights. God knows what is true and what is false, but all I can say is that motherfucker helped me. He's a man of his word.
And did you remember watching a video that he posted from Dubai? He was living in Dubai and he was discussing how, fabulous his life was out there, and he was lying by a pool. And it was a big lengthy video.
Yeah.
And he sort of dedicated the whole thing, how he dedicated how Kinahan changed his whole life, I think was the title. But it went on for about 10 or 20 minutes. I must have a look and see if it's still there.
Yeah.
Could have taken down. He had said, he spoke about on that video how he'd been working as a tree surgeon and, working very hard. And he would have given up the sport had it not been for Kinahan coming in. He was asked during that interview or that video basically about the role of Daniel Kinahan and how he made sure he got paid. He said, he got me more money for what I paid in his advising fees and for what I paid for my trainer. He knows boxing inside out, and that's what young fighters need to get the right people around them. Anyway, as time has gone on, I think that those boxers have been quietened.
Yes.
They have stopped kind of speaking about Daniel Kinahan. Daniel Kinahan has very much gone back into the shadows. Apart from the sanctions, I think he realises the pressure, particularly from the Irish. He's now, a file is now with the Director of Public Prosecutions. His best friend and his number two, Sean McGovern, is in jail in Dubai. Negotiations are ongoing about his extradition here to Ireland. But John O'Carroll is still very visible for anybody watching him, and it's because of his conversion to Islam.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, he puts up regular videos. I suppose he spoke about it first last year when he took a trip to Mecca. I think he's very sincere about his conversion. I think he speaks very kind of openly. We saw him meeting with a lot of, Muslim clerics. I suppose look, that's a matter of personal conscience. He is very direct and very sort of, he addresses it and addresses some of the feedback he's had, both positive and negative. I imagine he has had both, knowing the world of social media. And I think he doesn't pull his punches, not to mix metaphors. He's very, he always speaks about it.
He said, all I want to do is live a more disciplined life and become the best version of myself. Islam has me so at peace with myself, and I'm truly grateful for all the beautiful brothers who have showed me the way.
Look, I think it's very important people make decisions of conscience, and everybody should be respectful of that. But certainly this latest incident occurred because Conor McGregor put up a post on social media, as he's inclined to do, describing, calling John O'Carroll, who they've had words before, calling him a carpet licker.
It just seems so at odds with that sort of beautiful version of himself and his beautiful brothers. And then you go to kind of social media war with your fellow Dubliner.
Yeah.
And it's all very...
Yeah, I mean, look, that's so, like, obviously John O'Carroll has taken that as a comment on his religion. John O'Carroll has posted pictures before of him praying, obviously with the bowed head, which would be part of that religious practice. And he responded to McGregor saying, imagine someone you looked up to as a kid, like Conor McGregor, calling you a carpet licker because I put my head to the ground every day speaking to God. Never mind disrespecting Islam. This fellow should be ashamed of himself. Islam has made me a better man all around. I just hope he finds peace like I have someday. So, I mean, McGregor, we've seen obviously a lot of social media posts from McGregor in recent times.
In fairness, John O'Carroll does make some comments in relation to Conor McGregor, which in light of what's happened in recent months, many people might agree. When McGregor calls him this name, carpet licker, he screenshots that and he comes back at him and says, "We all used to look up to you. Now we're ashamed of the man you are. You became that mask you put on to impress people. Now everyone's just laughing at you, not with you anymore. It's embarrassing. I pray for you, my brother, and hope you get your shit together for family's sake."
Yeah.
That would really echo many people's sentiments about McGregor at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is focused on McGregor obviously lost his big title match with Khabib. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his surname, who is a Muslim. And even in recent times, we've seen McGregor have a pop at a dairyman. I don't know if you saw that story.
I did, yes.
So again, that was surrounded at Khabib, and where Paul Hughes basically, he was fighting and he spoke. So McGregor obviously has, it's obviously really hurt him that he lost this championship match and lost it in really clear and unequivocal terms. And, the religious aspect of that has become an issue. I mean, the thing with the calling Paul Hughes not an Irishman, I thought was extraordinary, really. Yeah. And obviously you had Khabib in the ring at that fight, saying to Paul Hughes, congratulating Ireland for their support of Palestine. And McGregor has responded to that. So it's
does McGregor know what he is or what he wants to be, or
I mean, I don't know, but I mean, it's
here he is talking about he might run for president of Ireland.
Yeah,
and he's out at Trump's inauguration shaking hands with Tommy Robinson and or certainly, with knocking around at Elon Musk and supporting Tommy Robinson, who's in jail in the UK. And I mean, does he actually seriously have any consideration that we want somebody like that as president of Ireland?
Well, who knows? I mean, it's a funny mix of worlds now, isn't it? With all of this stuff and McGregor's social media posts and how
the more McGregor does, the more he reveals that soul he has. What he's done, within that small conversation we've had about him. Okay, he has on social media attacked a woman who took a civil case against him.
Yeah,
where it was found that he raped her.
Yeah,
on social media,
referring to Nicola Hand, obviously.
To Nicola Hand. Okay.
Yeah,
he's called a fellow Dubliner sportsman, John O'Carroll, a carpet licker, which Carroll has taken up is because he has converted to Islam.
Yeah,
he is congratulating and showing his support for Tommy Robinson, who is like one of the best known far-right agitators in the UK, who has been in Ireland to try and drum up support here.
Yeah.
And each time, and now he's called a dairyman, what is he making out that he's not Irish?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just a few little things that are going on in McGregor's head. The more he speaks, the more he puts out, the more he shares his thoughts. I think really the more he's letting himself down.
I think there's if you look at Donald Trump, people always think he's chaotic and maybe not strategic. But I think what Trump has recognized in the modern world and how media is consumed and how social media operates is that if you're in trouble, you generate a load of other controversies very quickly. So you get this cycle of news. I think Conor McGregor, clearly, for him to be involved in a spat with a fellow Dublin boxer will then start generating headlines. I think the Nicola Hand situation, was certainly in this country.
Becoming toxic
had become toxic. I mean, that woman stood up in court and won her case. But I think there is a strategy now. If you're in a trouble like that, which is really, a definite trouble.
Do you think that's what he's doing? Do you think it's actually sort of...
Well, I know...
He's operating on the kind of level of advice that Trump maybe takes or doesn't take.
But I don't think Trump takes advice. I think that is an instinct that he has. If you're in trouble in a PR sense, generate a load of controversies, not just one, generate a load of them, and the world moves on, because that is the nature of a news cycle. And I don't think if Conor McGregor hadn't said anything, there would be more talk of him losing a civil action in relation to a sex attack. So I think it's not that, like, this is...
I think he just attacks. I think he has judgment against everybody, and I think he is probably somebody who, it's his way or no way. He doesn't agree with other, obviously, religions. He doesn't agree with immigration. He doesn't agree with various things that he just lashes out.
Yeah, well, maybe so.
He's having a bad day, he just goes on his phone. His phone should be one of those, didn't they always say that your phone should have an in-house sort of breathalyzer or something on it, that it doesn't allow you use it if you've been out having a good time or anything. I think that sort of thing would work better for McGregor than anything. I'm not sure it's a concerted effort to to manipulate the media to throw a load of curveballs at them. I just think it's his personality, and I think he just it's just attack all the time.
Well, I don't know if it's a worked out strategy, but I do know that that's what they say about Donald Trump, that he doesn't take advice, but this is his instinct. You go out and you just keep going, and you know, the more controversy, the better.
Shouldn't know who can keep up with him.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Anyway, so yes, that's the two of them, but it's interesting that they both sort of came up at the same time. Both had links to the mob, obviously through friends, and through, in the case of Carroll, because he'd taken on and signed up to Daniel Kinahan's boxing promotions firm, as many others were, and now they're kind of against one another. It just shows every group can see a schism,
a fracture.
Okay, thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola. Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.